Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Shiza Charanya, and in this video, I'll be showcasing some of my processing JavaScript projects. A couple of months ago, I learned processing JavaScript, and I was so intrigued by the type of projects you could make. So I went out and made a bunch of projects and decided that I wanted to showcase them through a two-part series on my YouTube channel. The first part is already out, so feel free to check that out if you haven't already. And this is part two, where I'll be showcasing some more intricate projects with advanced syntax. So I think watching the first part would be a bit helpful in terms of the syntax and understanding how the code and functions work in processing JavaScript. But I'll try to recap some of them in this video. So without further ado, let's get into it, and I hope you enjoy it. In this video, I'll be showcasing four of my projects: Titanic, Rock, Paper, Scissors, and Build a House. So there's a static version of this and an animation version of this, which are two different projects. So let's start off with Titanic. For Titanic, what happens is you have that ship, and then when it hits the iceberg, it drops with the boom text. And when it reaches the bottom, you see that there's a series of text that appears. So Titanic, All is Fair in Love and War, and two of the main actors, which are Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet. So in this, what happens is I have mostly if statements, because when I want to control a series of actions that happen in this animation, first of all, the user doesn't do anything, so I can't really press any buttons or something that would make these texts appear. The computer has these signals that tells it, okay, now bring this text in. Now make this ship sink. So the way it works is the ship is around here off the screen, and I bring the ship into the picture until it hits over here, somewhere around here. And what happens is, as similar to the first part of the series, there's a variable x that controls the x coordinates of the entire ship. So the ship moves all at once because the x coordinates linked, and so is the y coordinate, but that comes on later. So once the x coordinates linked, the entire ship comes, and once it hits the iceberg, you see that there is, first of all, here, let me scroll down to it so you can actually see. There should be a text that says boom, and hopefully you saw that, but if you didn't, actually, let's restart while I find it. Right, so you see that boom text that happened. And so after that boom text, that signals that the ship should go down. So over here, you can see that I have all this syntax for the ship. And then after that, I also use for statements to create these dots, because I can't have 100 lines dedicated to the dots, right? So I use for statements for that. And so here is the boom text. This determines when the boom text and sound will vanish. So the boom text and the sound comes. You probably didn't hear the sound because I don't think I'm sharing the sound for this, but when it comes, it leaves after when it reaches to that point. After that, you want it to go down, and this is when y is greater than or equal to 560. So basically, when it reaches the surface, this determines that the speed of the y should stop. It should be 0. And so that's why the Titanic ship has sunk and it's halted. After that, you know that the text comes and the text is moving in. So this is the text 1 animation. It's moving in. And you can see that with this text, what I wanted to do in this project is not only experiment with the different font size, the different fonts that there are that I can use in processing JavaScript, but also the text coming in from different directions. So some text was coming in from this direction and coming in like this. Some were coming in from this, some were coming up from down and up and down. So there's different positions that it comes from. And so the way I did it is I just had the speed and the direction coming in all towards the center from different points. It was like coming in like this. And this is what led to this text animation. And I consider this in a way this video animation of a poster for Titanic. And this is why I really like the project, the way it all composes together to make an animation without the user having to do anything. That was my Titanic project, and let's move on to the next one, which is rock, paper, scissors. And in rock, paper, scissors, what's happening is you see the screen right here. And obviously you have to press click here to start. Now, the way I made this button is you have ranges for mouse X and mouse Y. So there's mouse X and mouse Y command in processing JavaScript so that it knows the X and Y coordinates of your mouse. And if I go to, let me go find it. I have a lot of code for this one because I needed like different screens and different if statements so that it would work out right here. So you see you have a range for mouse X and you have a range for mouse Y so that when you click the button, if you click here, nothing's going to happen. But if you click here, something is going to happen. And you can see here that I set start to true here and then start to false here. Now the way I made this game is mostly using variables that are set to true and false so that certain things happen at a certain time. So I know for Titanic I used if statements, but here you can't have pressing this button again and it's gonna work when you say start's equal to true, right? Because you can't just press the button and start again. In other words, what I mean is that if you click start to play, you can only press it one time, right? That's why you set start to false, so that when it runs again, when mouse is clicked, this is the function, it makes sure that start's gonna be false so that this if statement doesn't run again. And that's what works for different ones too. Like if I do this one or this one, all of these, they have that false button over here. And this is for if you want to pick rock, if you want to pick paper, if you want to pick scissors. So let's just say you want to pick, rock, to say rock. It's a tie, right? You chose rock and the computer chose rock. So the way I did this part is, this one is an image from Khan Academy. So I mentioned this in part 1 of the video, and what happens is in Khan Academy you have the function get image, and you can take images from Khan Academy itself. So there was an image of a rock that I took from Khan Academy, and it would take me a long time to draw something like this. So I'm grateful that Khan Academy has features like this as well for processing JavaScript. But I did make the paper and the scissors myself, and these buttons obviously. So let's say again, let's pick scissors this time, and it's a tie again. So this is the motion that goes from one screen to another, and after you see the colors change, right, every time, and everything changes essentially. You see, if you press paper, the text changes, these buttons change. I don't know why it's a tie again and again. This must be pretty lucky for the computer as well. So speaking of the computer, what happens when the computer wants to choose either rock, paper, scissors is I set rock, paper, and scissors all designated to a number. So let me actually see the order. The rock's probably 0, paper's probably 1, and scissors probably 2. So because of that, it randomly picks one of these numbers. So obviously it's arbitrary. And let's say you pick rock. Wow, it is a tie again. Okay, so it picked rock, and so what would happen is in the if statement, it would say if the computer picked 0, then you display the rock. And then you have an if statement saying if this is 0 and this is 0, then it's a tie. That's basically what it means. And after that, to play the game again, you have to press the restart button over here. You press the restart button and then you start again. And that's essentially rock, paper, scissors. Now, for my next project, I have build a house. So for build a house, as I mentioned, there's the static version and there's the animation version. So let me show you the static version. Oh, that's the animation. Yeah, that's a static version. So for the static version, I essentially have a house and a car and this houseplant that isn't really moving. In the animation, that's going to be different because obviously it's an animation. But the way I did this whole project, build a house, is I wanted to accumulate all the learning that I had from the processing JavaScript course. And you can see that I used for statements to repeat these windows here. And I also use that link function with the X value. So if I move this, you can see that the house moves too, right? Because I linked all the X coordinates. And same thing for the car. You can see that it's moving too. And then there's a lot of different functions. So there's like the rect, which is the rectangle. And this is like some of the basic syntax I was talking about, which is discussed in the part 1 of my video. So feel free to look back to it if you want to look at some of the other syntax that you can use to draw some shapes in processing JavaScript. So you can see that I also had these shadows, and I think it really added a cool effect to make the house look a bit more realistic. And you can see that I had this envisioned house in mind, and it kind of came to reality with this project, which is what I really like about it. And this is basically it for the static version. Now, for the animation version, it's quite different. Let me actually start it. So yeah, so the car is moving. And you see the person come out, sprint, shoot the ball. The ball goes into the hoop. And once it hits the ground, it has the text swish. Let me actually play that again. Yep. So that's basically the animation for Build a House. And first of all, what happened is you see the car moved. But the thing is, you can't move just the car, although that's what would happen in real life. Is in this animation, what you have to do is you have to move the house and the car as well, so that it separates and it causes that sort of animation look to it. So here you see that the house was like over here, right? This was the center. Now the center is moved around here off the screen so that you can still see the garage on the right side, but you can't see the entirety of the house. And when they move, the house stops at the specific point and the car stops at a specific point, so that it is positioned in this manner. Now when the red car stops, you see that the person gets out of the car and they run towards a certain spot. So they sprint, and you can see that their legs were actually moving, right? I don't know if you noticed that, but I can restart it again and you can see that their legs were moving. So once they got their legs moving, you can see here, they stopped and they released the ball, which went into the net and hit the ground. And obviously, you know, with that Steph Curry range, you easily get a swish. Now, that is essentially my project. And after this, what happened is I had to have 2 different figures so that I could have that sprinting effect. So I'll show you. I probably have it somewhere in my code, which is quite long, but I'm happy that I added some specific details to it because it did give that certain look to it. So this is more of the house. You can see the garage, the door handles. This is the car. Okay, here. So ball person 1 and ball person 2, and then essentially this top part is staying the same, but the legs are what's moving. So it looks like as it's alternating quickly, then the legs are looking like they're sprinting. And that's what I really found really cool, is that it looks like it's sprinting because of the fact that it's alternating. And once it alternates and it releases the ball actually has its own series of movements as well. So you see when the person stops walking, the ball speed is the third person and the ball is drawn. So there's like another position of the person shooting in its form. And so here you see there's the ball movement towards the net, and it's a nested if statements. So you see that if it gets to this specific point, then it moves this way. If it gets here, then it moves this way, eventually moving down. And at the end, you see that after it shows that swish command. I also really like the background for this. I used a for statement for that actually. So it looks like that gradient thing where it goes from darker to lighter. And that's essentially my animation. I really hope you liked all of these projects that I just showed you. And if you did, please subscribe to my channel and even like this video. I'd really appreciate it. And stay tuned for more projects that I'll be building and showcasing on my YouTube channel. Thank you and see you later.